Podcasting will be a thrill. Grandpa and chill, grandson and friends. Grandpa and chill in full effect. We talk about it all, yeah, put it all on the set with that pet craze too. We chillin' with Rosie, come through, stay tuned, yeah, listen closely. Cause this the millennials and the silent generation coming together, discussion in rotation. This is Grandpa and Chill.
How many games do you have behind you, Bob?
Without looking, I don't know, but I'm going to guess there's 4 shelves. I think there's 12 games behind me.
Wow.
What a tabletop way to answer, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me reason this.
That's pretty funny. I didn't want to give you the back of my head. I thought that would be rude.
It's good. I love it.
Yeah.
How many games have you made so far?
I started this company when I was 28 years old on April 1st, 1985. So we've been making about 20 games a year. So I mean, probably 400 maybe or 500, something like that. I never counted them.
Wow.
A lot of games. I don't invent them all. I have a team of people now that help me, but in the beginning it was just me and one other guy.
Yeah.
It's really fun. It's like the best job you could have. You guys have a good job doing this thing, but it's been pretty great. You know, I love it, and I'm planning on doing it, you know, as long as I can.
Yeah. What was the strike that?
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I mean,
no,
what was it? Go ahead, Brandon. You go ahead.
I was gonna ask if you've ever been to PAX before.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you asked me that because I was trying to remember the name of PAX. I went up in Seattle once.
Okay.
Is that PAX West? They had something up in Seattle that I went to. And yesterday I was trying to talk to someone about that, and they said, we've got to go to these, not Gen Con, not Comic Con, but these game conventions. They have them on the East Coast and the West Coast. And I can't remember the name of the company or what they're called, and it's PAX. That was exactly what I was trying to think of. Mm-hmm. We've also given games. You know how they have a library there that you can go in and just play games?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We've given games to that, which has been very cool.
Yeah. Sorry, Phines. What were you gonna say?
No, just that the ability to like say like what inspired you to start your own company?
Oh man. It's sort of like what inspired you to do a podcast. You know, you sort of have these ideas when you're growing up. I want to tell my story. I want to be out there. And I started out as a kid just doing stuff. My brother and I started a carnival in our backyard when we were about 8, and we raised money for the Jerry Lewis Telethon. And that was like our thing. And my job was sales and getting people to come to we didn't call it sales and marketing. It was to get people to come to the carnival. And then my sister was in charge of the cakewalk, and my little brother was in charge of selling popcorn. And we just sort of did projects like that. We had a little newspaper called the Moog Gazette, and it was written by my brother, and I was in charge of selling it. And it just was always, I always knew I was going to have my own company. The question was, what was it going to be? And when I was 27, I had a friend who was an accountant at Price Waterhouse who was bored, and he said, let's start a company. And I said, okay. And we got it down to 3 possible things. One was in the tech industry doing, the final 3 were novelty ice cream bars. You know, the Dove bar? It was like when the Dove bar was just invented. This is in 1984, 85. And we said, let's do our own novelty ice cream. And we looked at that. Second choice was microbrewery. And the third choice was board games. And it turned out that the board games needed less capital to get going than any of the others.
Really?
We didn't have much money, so we went for it. And that was how we got into board games. I liked trivia and I liked Trivial Pursuit. And I said, I never done this, but I think I could do it. And so we tried it.
Probably a lot healthier than the other 2, right?
Yeah.
Well, I certainly have consumed a lot of the other 2 since then.
Either way.
So I'm not sure. It is healthier, but I'm not sure. And I haven't quite gotten the beer bug out of me. There's a brewery here that Sapporo is trying to sell called the Anchor Brewing Company here in San Francisco. And I've been really involved in trying to put a group together to buy that. I still would like to have my own brewery. But
Yeah, that'd be fun.
yeah, it definitely was healthy.
Are you guys anywhere near close to getting it?
Well, there's a bunch of different people talking to him. We're a couple months away from knowing if we're going to get it or not. But it loses a lot of money. And so what they want to do is they want to just sell the land here in San Francisco. You can sell all that land and they can make as much money as they can selling the company. But we're trying to talk them into the idea that it's been here for 100 years and it's part of San Francisco and too many things are being lost and they should want it to stay, and it would be a wonderful thing for them to do PR wise. And we're willing to pay good money for it, but it doesn't make money right now. That's why they closed it down. So we're trying to get them to reopen it before they sell all the equipment. All the brewing.
I think I've had that's it's
Anchor
not a Korean
Steam is their
beer.
most Anchor Steam. It's a steam beer. It's their most famous product is Anchor Steam. It's in San Francisco.
I remember when I went to PAX, because I thought of it as a video game competition place, and you don't really think of board games.
Yeah.
But my brother's like a streamer and a video game fanatic. And then you go and right past all the video games is hundreds of tables of board game makers, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, and most of them are very small, independent. They've got one or two games or they're trying to get going. So to have such massive success is like incredible in that field, right?
Yeah, it's hard. We've been really, really fortunate. I got this idea that if we were going to compete against Hasbro and Mattel, we needed to be different and not just copy what they were doing. And so we've always had a learning element to our games, but we've also have always been really irreverent. And so our first product was called Murder Mystery Party. And you guys may know about these, where you invite people to your house and everyone dresses up in costume and you try to solve a murder. And that's that. Have you heard of those?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are the originators of that entire concept. We own the trademark. We own the registered trademark on Murder Mystery Party. No one had ever put those three words together until 1985 when we did, and that was the product that launched us. And that was a game that everybody that I talked to who was into games said, well, no one's going to buy. And I said, well, why not? It's really fun. And they said, because when you buy a game, you want to play it over and over again. And Murder Mystery Party, once you play it once, you know who the murderer is. And a game, you want to be able to play it with 2 to 6 people. And Murder Mystery Party, you have to have exactly 8. And a game, is something that has a start, a finish, an end, and a game board. And this thing doesn't have any of those. And I said, no, but it's really fun. And then they said, and also, can you imagine Toys R Us putting a game on the shelf that little kids will see that has the word murder in it? Even Clue doesn't use the word murder, on their box. And I said, I know, but it's really fun. And so we started selling it in bookstores and at Barnes and Noble. And at the time there was Walden Books and Borders. And we were able to get it into all of these bookstores and then department stores. And then it finally got into Toys R Us. And I took a picture and framed it when we got into Toys R Us, because the guy who had told us it would never get into Toys R Us was a very, very well-known and respected toy consultant at the time. And I liked one-upping him. And so we've always been that way. We've always tried to do things that are a little bit irreverent, a little bit off kilter.
Yeah. The first time I've heard the term toy consultant in my life, I think.
There's a bunch of them. There's some who just are sort of publicists and PR people, and then there's some who work in retail, like that. You might be the toy buyer at Walmart for 20 years, and then you retire and you become a toy consultant, and they go into companies and try to help them decide, how to manufacture toys, how to market toys, or possibly how to identify a good toy from a bad toy. It's a pretty kooky field, toys and games.
Yeah, you
I'm
get
sorry.
to be a kid.
Well, people used to tell me, have you guys seen the movie Big with Tom Hanks? Have you heard of that movie? So
Yeah.
when that movie came out, we existed because it came out about 4 or 5 years after we started the company. And I got so many people saying to me, they made that movie about you because you're a kid who's an adult and you're running a toy company. And I think for Christmas, I probably got 15 of the miniature FAO Schwartz pianos. There's that scene in the movie where he's on there and they're playing chopsticks together. And people thought that was a funny gift to give me. I got so many of those.
That's funny.
That's great.
When you guys do this, do you do all different kinds of businesses? All different
Yeah.
kinds of people? Yeah. But I'm your first game inventor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what though? This is the thing that keeps popping in my head. You are so obviously, to me, let's say, you could be having me fooled, but you seem so full with joy. I'm wondering, is this, or you seem like you're very, it seems you have a light to you, a lightness to you that is noticeable, at least to me. So I'm like, should I be making board games? Is this what am I doing wrong?
Well, I have to tell you, I have to tell you, first of all, normally I would be able to tell you what drugs and alcohol I had been consuming, but I haven't had anything today. This is just my normal self. But what I would say is I'm pretty good at getting people excited about my ideas. And you could have another game inventor on, and they would be more of a nerdy engineering D&D type guy, who might not be as excited about it as I am. But I just think the idea of taking something inside your head and then manufacturing it and then sharing it with people and then having them have moments or memories of experiencing it with other people who are their friends is so cool that I get really excited about it. I've been doing it now 39 years, and I'm just as excited now as I was in the beginning. And my friends are all retiring and stuff now, but I want to keep doing this. I got a lot more games in my head that I want to do.
Is there a cutthroat Mad Men underbelly to this industry, or is it all sort of very joyous?
No, there's definitely, that's a great way to say it, a cutthroat Mad Men underbelly. Like I'm into coming up with new games that marry kind of learning with fun, and there's a whole bunch of people who basically are saying, I'm in this business to make money. I don't care really about kids. I want to figure out how to make money. And they're the people that do a lot of knockoffs. They'll go to the store and buy a bunch of stuff and then send it to China, say, can you make it cheaper? And then they'll go to retailers and they'll say, I can sell you the same thing at 30% less or 50% less. So there's a whole bunch of that. There's also a thing, and I gave a talk on this in June to a group in London, where they said, tell us your pet peeves about the toy industry. And I said, well, one of my pet peeves is the jargon that people use. People will say, retailers will say, we really love your company and we want to partner with you. And when I hear the term partner, I know that means I'm going to be a victim. It's going to be a one-sided thing. They're going to want big discounts. They're going to want me to make special things for them, and then they're not going to pay me. And the other one I don't like is, let me tell you this in full transparency, because when people say that, they almost are never fully transparent. They'll tell you something, but they won't ever tell you the whole thing. And so I said to the game inventors, when you present your games, because there's another thing you probably don't know about, there's about 500 to 1,000 people who invent games and toys and then present them to companies. They don't work for the companies. They're just a community of people that come up with new ideas. And that's what you could do, Phines, is you could come up with ideas for games and then submit them to companies and see if someone wants to make your game. But I told the inventors, tomorrow, you're going to have people like me say to you, you're going to present your game, and and they're going to say, oh, in full transparency, I got to tell you, we're working on something like that. And then you're going to ask them, oh, well, how is it similar to what I'm showing you? And they're going to say, oh, that's proprietary, that's confidential, I can't tell you. Well, if they say that, it's not full transparency. And the other way, you're going to say to an inventor, I mean, you're going to say to a company like mine, if you're an inventor, hey, in full transparency, I want you to know I'm glad you're excited about my product, but there's some other companies that also are interested in buying it. And then when I say, oh, well, who else is interested? You're going to say, oh, I can't tell you that, it's confidential. Well, then you're not giving me full transparency.
Yeah.
You're giving me kind of partial opaqueness. And so that's part of what goes on in the toy industry. People steal each other's ideas. People tell people that they're working on things they're not really working on. And so you have to sort of learn how to navigate that. But just like, going rafting, when you go down a river, there's big rocks you can hit and you can fall in the river, but you also can have a really great time going down the rapids. So I know how to navigate it, and I help other people learn, and it's plenty of fun. But there definitely is that dark underbelly.
Yeah, it sounds like poker.
Yeah,
or something.
A little bit.
Like a lot of bluffing. It was like everyone's like, I'm transparent. I'm like, okay.
No, there is some bluffing that goes on, and licensing is a big part of it. So if we're looking at a license, like right now we're trying to get a Disney Marvel license for Spider-Man and I think Captain America and Iron Man and Thor. And there's another company that we know also wants to get a license that's sort of related to what we're doing. And we think Disney will only give us one of the companies a license. So there's a little cat and mouse game going on between us and the other company in terms of what we're sharing and how we're doing our proposal to Disney to see who gets it. But we've worked with Disney for decades, so we're pretty hopeful that it'll work out.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So you guys are the largest independent game company in the world. What does that mean?
Well, there's some game companies that are public, that have public following, like Mattel and Hasbro and Spin Master. And then there's some game companies that are owned by European companies, and in the US is their subsidiary. And then there's other game companies that are owned by private equity, which is sort of rich money people.
Yeah. They dip their toe in the toy industry. That's so interesting.
It's crazy. So if you take all those out, then we're the largest.
Wow.
We're the largest, where some guy like me started a company and made that his career and put his life and heart into it and built it, and hasn't sold it and hasn't gone public and hasn't become part of a bigger company. So it's a dubious distinction, but to some people that's important because they want to sort of support someone who's creating jobs and creating products and isn't part of a bigger thing that's kind of the corporate thing. We're not really part of that.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
It does. No, it's great. Phines and Sierra and I were all really passionate about creative arts, and Phines is a visual artist, and Sierra voiceover and all that stuff. I'm curious, like, you've produced so many games. Do the ideas come to you when you sleep, or is it?
Well, first off, it's not just me. There's me and there's a team, and we have offices in Australia and England. So we have a couple people in Australia, a couple people in England, and then about 4 of us in the US who are all thinking up ideas.
Wow.
My process is a pretty specific process, and I actually do. There's 2 places where I come up with most of my ideas. One is when I'm kind of alone without a lot of distractions and a lot of inputs, like on an airplane. If I'm on an airplane, I put on the headphones and the ideas kind of start to flow. And I do a lot of flying to Europe and to Australia, and so I'm often on flights that are 10 hours or longer, and that's some of my best creative work. The other place is is relaxing and going to a bar. I usually have to go by myself because with other people, I can't get in the right headspace. But I'll go into a bar or I'll sit outside at a beer garden or something on an afternoon and get a beer. And I have a pad of paper and I just start jotting down ideas. And what I try to do is I try to think about themes. What are themes that I see in society? I think about who's the consumer that I want to play the game, and then what are they about. So if it's a game for a millennial, for a 25 to 28 to 40-year-old, I sort of think about the characteristics that they have. If it's a game for a 5-year-old, I think about, hey, what's a 5-year-old like? You know, they can't read, they don't like to sit still, they always want it to be their turn, they like a lot of attention. And then I create a game for a person that has those characteristics, and I marry that to one of the themes that would be exciting for them. But it has to be, I have to use that process, because when I just think, what's a great game, and I just sort of free flow, I end up with things that aren't commercial. So I like them and I can play them with my friends, but they're not commercial. And in our business, for me to be able to keep university games going and employ people and pay rent and all the things that we have to do in running a business, I have to be able to come out with products that are commercially viable. And so my process gets me to a place where it's commercially viable, because I'm starting out thinking about the consumer who's going to play the game versus just what I intrinsically love. And that might be a difference between my art and what you guys do, where you can just have it come from yourself and then let it find its audience versus trying to figure out what the audience wants and make that.
Wow. See, I kind of got 3 questions. I get the first one is, do you have any like not maybe an idol, but like of someone that trailblazed for you, someone that like gave you direction, a mentor of some sort, like, as because this seems like I'm opening up the vibe of this being an art, which it is definitely art. You're an artist for sure. So now I'm like, did you just like, did anybody help you? Did you have any, get any guidance from anybody, or how did that work?
The guidance that I got was not about game design. The guidance that I got was about self-esteem and self-confidence. So from a very young age, my father and my mother infused in me that I could do anything I wanted, that if I applied myself, I could do anything I wanted. Now, it was not true at all. I was not a particularly good athlete. I'm not a good drawer. I wasn't, as a kid, very good in math, but I didn't know that, because they always said you can do whatever you want. And when you're a kid, what you want to do is naturally things that you have an inclination towards. And so I didn't know that I couldn't play a musical instrument. In fact, when I went to college, I talked the band at the school that I went to Stanford. I talked the band at the school into letting me march a beer keg and play in the percussion section. And I had no training, because I just believed I'm going to go out there and I'm going to be able to play a drum as well as someone who has been doing it for 10 years. Now, that's ridiculous. But that's just how I am. About 5 years ago, I decided I wanted to write a musical, and I now have written this musical. I don't know if it'll ever make it to stage, but I wrote the entire book. I wrote the lyrics to 22 songs. I went and found a composer who wrote music to my songs, and I went to New York and put a workshop together on an off-Broadway stage in New York with money that I got people to donate. So I just have a life where I'm always just setting a goal and then figuring out how to get there. And board games was the same thing. Before I did board games, I did this thing I mean, some of the stuff I've done when I think back, it's like, what was I thinking? Because the probability of being successful was so low. I was up at Tahoe working, this is when I was about 25, working at a resort as like a dishwasher, and I ran the bar and that kind of stuff. And I came in the next morning to clean out the garbage, and some of the staff had gotten stoned or high or something, and they had taken gummy bears and put them on the back of paper plates and then drawn scenes around them and put captions on them. I mean, there were like 50 of these. They were gummy bears. They licked the back and stuck them on the plate. They would draw like a tree around it and then write gummy tree. And then there was another one where, they did something else. And I took all of these and I brought them home, and I went to a friend of mine who was an illustrator, and I said, do you think you could make a book out of these? And I'd never done a book before. And she created art boards, and we published Gummy Bear Goes to Camp, which was a book about gummy bears. And then we talked a company in Germany into donating to us 5,000 bags of gummy bears, and we glued a bag in every book, and we sold the books, and people were opening up these gummy bears, licking the backs and sticking them on the pages of the book, the same way that they had done with the paper plates. So that's just a crazy thing to do. I mean, I just have been that way. I thought, well, I've never published a book. I think I'll do that. And so when you ask about the game company, it never occurred to me that I needed someone to teach me how to do it, because I just thought I'll figure it out, because my parents had taught me as a young kid, you can do anything. And I think it works if you have that kind of parenting where you're getting really, really strong reinforcement. And I just am lucky. I don't run into anybody that has that story, because it's just so unusual. And it's unusual that people would take it in that direction. But for me, it's led to a really great life. I've been very fortunate.
Wow. Well, I'm gonna try to knock these out, because I'm gonna have to leave at 8:30. But
all right, you got two more questions. I'll give you short answers.
Yes. Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine. I'm truly enjoying all of it. So thank you. And I lost one of the questions anyways, because once you answered that, I just got 10 more questions. So don't even worry about it.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, it's seriously, it's great.
And we got to let Sierra ask something.
Sierra, you're right. Sierra,
go ahead. It'll come to
my
me.
Questions.
You keep
okay.
going.
All right. My next question is, as also a fellow artist, and now that I've learned more about your confidence and your ability to go out here and try, it just seems I would have a hard time working with others, yet with your go-to attitude, you're wanting to get stuff done. It just seems like I am wondering how you've learned to be so collaborative. Here we are.
Okay, so you are incredibly perceptive and insightful. I'm amazed, because I am the worst team player in our company. And I hate ideation meetings. When I interview people, I go, how many meetings a week are you used to at your job? And if it's more than 4, I go, okay, I got to warn you, we don't have meetings in our company. Everybody works individually, and then we get together. So you're really, really insightful on that. But I'm the only one. Everybody else needs to work together and be collaborative. So what usually happens is I'll start the meeting. I also have a little bit of trouble just sitting still. So I start the meeting, I leave, I then come back 2 hours later, and I go, what'd you guys come up with? And they tell me what they've come up with. And then I say, I become the mentor you were asking about for them. And I say, well, have you thought of this? Have you thought of this? What about this? And then that gets their juices going, so we end up with a better result. But I can't sit still, because my brain's going so fast, I feel like I already know the answer to what we should do. And that ruins the creativity and the collaboration if I'm telling them what it is before they say their ideas. So I actually leave the room, they put it all on a whiteboard, and then when I come back, they say, Bob, here's where we are. And then I give my input.
I think this is my first collaborative artistic endeavor, and I think we're doing okay. But for the most part, I am not the best working with others. I'm not the best. Okay, this is my last one. So you've learned to be commercial. I guess I want to know a fan favorite without explaining the rules or anything that you have that will never be commercial enough that you and
I had
your
the same question.
coworkers. Oh, sorry, that's my last one.
That's
There we
great.
I did a game that I love, and it's called 20 Questions. And the reason it's called 20 Questions is because we wanted to have a hook where people would say, "Oh, I know 20 questions." I played that at home. And it is just this amazing game, and it can be broadened a million different ways, and it sells okay. But it was my game that I thought would become my Scrabble or my Monopoly or my Yahtzee that everyone would know in the English-speaking world, and it hasn't turned out to be that way. So that would be the game that is a long way from being as commercially successful as I would like it to be. But I'm really proud of the game and of the gameplay.
What is it?
We have a well-known person, place, or thing, and there are 20 clues describing the person, place, or thing. And the 20 clues are broken down into 4 categories. There's some that have to do with interacting with the board. There's some that are puns. There's some that are descriptive, and they're general descriptions. And then there's some that are specific descriptions. And so what you do in the game is you give a number 1 through 20, and then you get a clue. And depending on what number you pick, randomly, you might get a good clue or a bad clue. Okay. And the goal of the game is to identify the mystery topic. And the faster you identify the mystery topic, the more points you get. But it's not like trivia where you get one question with one answer. It builds on itself. So the clues might be, I am male. Then the next clue might be, I was born in 1811. And then the next clue might be, I'm an American. And then the next clue might be, there's a state capital named after me. But the next time someone plays the game, they might get those clues in a totally different order. You know, my first name, you can find my first name in the Bible. The clues are like that. And then you have to put them together and figure out, I was president of the United States. And as you play the game, every player, you go around. So every player is trying to guess the same mystery topic. And there's a lot of math and a lot of randomness to it, but the way it's built is that if you get the third clue one time around, the person rotates to the right, so the next time you're going to get the second clue. So everybody is getting, there's an equalizer and a balancer, so everybody is getting the same chances. And the one thing about it is every answer every player knows, which is so anti-trivia. So what we've done is we've taken well-known people, places, and things. The one I was giving you was Abraham Lincoln. And well-known people, places, and things. So you have this lack of stress or anxiety that I know the answer, but can I guess it before the other players? Anyway, that's 20 questions.
I love it.
I like that. You could do a lot with that.
Yeah.
And you could do a lot of like packs.
Yes, we've done that. We did the original game, then we did a nature and science version, we did a kids version, we did a Disney version, we did a sports version, we did a Bible version, we did a second edition. But even after all of that, it still isn't that well known. And that the question, I've never been asked that question before, Phines, and it's a great question because that's my one where I wish it was a bigger deal than it is. Most of the rest, I'm pretty happy with how they've sold. We have a new game now based on Rocky Horror Show. I don't know if you guys are into that or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we just started shipping. That's pretty exciting.
Nice.
Anything, Brandon? You got any?
No, I want to pass it to Sierra if she has any questions. But
yeah.
Sorry, what'd you say?
I was just asking if I'm blowing it. If you guys don't have any questions, I must be doing this whole show.
No, I'm really interested. No, I'm loving it. I want to kind of go back to like talking as like an artist, because you have a lot of different avenues that you express yourself creatively. Like you were saying, you've done musicals, you've done books, you do a lot of games. Do you have like a downtime kind of like hobby, or are you kind of the person that's like, I try to make hobbies, but then my hobbies turn into like my work, and then I really love my work, so like my work is my hobby.
Um, I mean, I kind of think of my life as a work of art. I
Yeah.
know that's a weird thing to say, but everything people talk about work-life balance, and I sort of think that's not the right way to think about it. Work-life integration is kind of the way to think about it. And so I'm not really sure sometimes when I'm working and when I'm living. Um, you know, I picked up golf. I thought, okay, I'll play golf because people play golf, and it's kind of a white thing to do. So I'll play golf, and I started playing golf, and before I knew it, I was like organizing tournaments, and I was thinking of new ways to play a round of golf, and I was having the Bob Moog Golf Invitational, and it's like I couldn't just go out there and enjoy golf. I had to make it into something, and that happens a lot. I went to a bar that I liked, and they were changing their menu every 6 months, and they did an astrology menu, and then they did a menu that was on where every drink was named after a famous impressionist artist, and they did these different menus. And before I knew it, I was talking to the owner of the bar about doing a menu on board games. It's like I everything sort of leads to some other project. I don't know how to explain it. I've never really thought about it.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how my life is, and I love it. And so there's no time when I turn off in the sense of saying, oh, now I'm not thinking creatively, or I'm not trying to do something creatively. I don't get worn out by it. It doesn't exhaust me.
That is so inspiring, so cool.
Jealous. I'm so jealous.
Literally, that's the dream.
Well, it just
I know it's unusual because I have a daughter who's a filmmaker. She's 33 and she's a filmmaker. And I said, let's make a movie on my company and on how we've influenced the world. And she said, well, you haven't influenced the world. And I said, yeah, but in the movie we're going to. And so,
Right.
and
yes,
so
yes.
I said, I'll make it. She said, well, are you in charge or am I in charge? I said, well, you're in charge. And I said, but I want to make this fun. And so she decided the movie is going to take place in 2056, which is when I'm 100 years old. And they're going to put makeup on me, and I'm going to be a 100-year-old man talking about how university games and our games have influenced the world. And the first part of the movie is going to be sort of recapping from 1985 to now. And then we're going to just make stuff up for the rest from now to 2056. It's going to make us really, really an important company. And I'm thinking, like, movies last for a while, and 30, 40 years from now, people are going to see this movie and they're going to think our company did all this great stuff that maybe we will do. I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. It's going to start out, the origin of it's going to start out. We have this actual clip of me in 1986. I was on a game show called Supermarket Sweepstakes.
Oh yeah, I love this
Sale
show.
of the Century. No, it's called Sale of the Century. And we have a clip of it. And we're going to actually show the clip because that was where I went to get the original funding for our company. I needed to win $30,000 so we could get the company going. And I didn't win any money, but it's still a funny clip.
You still got the company going.
Yeah, I still figured out a way to get it going.
Are you a grandfather?
Not yet. I've got 3 daughters, and I'm encouraging them, but none of them are married.
What your parents taught you, like, did you sort of try and pass that on, just that blind confidence and like?
Yeah, very consciously. And if you said to any of my daughters, hey, what can Moogs do? They would all say, they would all 3 say anything. Moogs can do anything. Now, they have not necessarily succeeded in everything they've tried, but they're all 3 living the life. My oldest daughter lives in Copenhagen, and she is a filmmaker. My middle daughter is living in Maryland in Bethesda. She works for the NIH, and she's a a biochemist and biophysicist.
Well,
My youngest daughter right now just got a grant, and she's going to 8 countries in 8 months to write a grant. She's an engineer, and she's writing a grant on how air can impact innovation in engineering and architectural projects. But it's really a scam. I hope people that gave her the grant don't see this. But she picked the 8 countries she wanted to go to. Then she figured out what the projects were that she could find in those countries.
that's amazing, and I would
They're paying all her expenses. She's in Cairo right now. She's going to Cairo, Egypt, Lebanon, Turkey, Japan, Germany, Brazil, and Mexico. That's pretty wild. I mean, she outmoved me on that. I never did anything like that. So,
I love that.
so yes, they all 3 were raised the same way I was in that regard.
We only have a very short time left, but what would you say if you were to walk through PAX and, like the youngest, most inexperienced board game designer who has one game and they're just trying to get themselves going, like what would your one thought or word of advice be?
I would tell them, don't manufacture your game because you're going to end up with a garage full of games, but find a company that will manufacture your game for you, let you do the marketing and let you get the royalty and learn from them. And then if you have more games in you, then start a company, but don't start it right away. Learn on someone else's dime instead of you making the mistakes. That would be
smart.
Yeah.
What about you, Phines? Final thought?
Final words. What I'll say is, no matter, I don't think what's so special about you and your family, and I'm sure people that you touch, and me being one of them at this day, it's like, I don't think it matters what was going to happen in your life, up or down, board games, whatever, that you're going to keep this spin of purposefulness in it. And I really appreciate that, and really appreciate talking to you about all that, and like that you're, spreading it. So I appreciate.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
It's good to have positive energy and to meet positive energy.
Yeah, agreed.
And Sierra?
Yes. I thank you so much for coming on, and I think it's very funny now because we were like waiting to get online and like waiting to like meet you and talk to you, and like just things weren't working, and we were just like, oh Jesus, we're like, oh no, like I hope he's not gonna be mad, we're like, I hope he's not gonna be this, like, because it doesn't work. Like every once in a while we have an issue where like Riverside just like doesn't participate with us, and like we ended up with like literally the nicest man ever.
Yeah.
The nicest
Well, good. I'm
most
glad
patient man.
you feel like it worked out. Good.
So just an absolute delight, and thank you so much for coming on the show and bearing with us.
What are your final thoughts, Bob?
Well, I think that for people who are watching and listening, or whoever view this, I think it's really important in life to find a way to be creative, and to do that you have to take risks. And it doesn't matter what your job is. I don't care if you're working in insurance, or you're a car salesman, or you work in a laundry. Everybody has something inside of them that they can share. And I always say shy people are selfish because they're taking it in from everyone else, but they aren't giving it. And I feel that way about creativity and imagination. We all have it. And it really makes the world a better place if you share it with other people, because nobody else has inside of them what you have inside of you. That's, I guess, my final thing.
Beautiful. And where can people find you and your company, all of our listeners? What do you want them to check out link-wise?
Well, University Games is the company that makes the games, and we are at universitygames.com. But we have this other sister company called rugame.com, and rugame.com sells games, thousands and thousands of different titles. But the cool thing that we're doing is we have a YouTube channel called RU Game Studios, and please go to that, because it has interviews that I've done with dozens of luminaries in the industry. You can find instructions on any game, on hundreds of games. You can see how-to videos. You can see old commercials, and it's sort of a marketplace or a clearinghouse for everything that's board games. So tabletop board games are at rugame.com. And it would be great if people would go to that and follow that, and that would really help us out.
Yeah, definitely. We'll share that in the show notes as well. My final thought, I love magic and fantasy and sort of something that is very connecting with other people. Do you have any sort of board game like that in your roster?
We have a new game called Fairies.
There we go. Oh, literally
Fairies.
says magic.
That is, I love it.
Fairies and magical creatures.
All right, I'm gonna get this.
Hey.
And it's a great game. We just did a Kickstarter on it, and we got thousands of people backing us for the Kickstarter. And it's a really fun game, and it has bogarts and trolls, and it has fairies and all different types of fairy folk creatures and people. And can you see it okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks beautiful.
It's the art is amazing. There's a famous artist named Annie Stagg who did all the art. We commissioned her for all this original art. Here's some of the
That name sounds familiar.
She's famous. I mean, people know her.
Yeah, Annie
And,
Stagg.
And this is just the game. We just played it with our sales force, which is a bunch of middle-aged men. They loved it, even though it's called Fairies. The game is very, very accessible for men and women and anybody else. And that is our fantasy game. And the winner is the person who builds the best fairy garden, while learning their way around the fairy folk kingdom.
Goodness.
Great way to end. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Really appreciate your patience with getting on. This has been an amazing episode. Thank you, Phines. Thank you, as always, Sierra. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much.
Take care, everyone.
Yeah,
Goodbye.
thank you. Nice,
Have a great
thank you.
night.
Nice having you. Thank you.
Podcasting with Grandpa Bart and Rosie, always on his shoulder. This is Grandpa and Chill.
Grandpa and Chill is brought to you by your hosts, Brandon Fox, Bart Frank, and Phines Jackson. Our producer is Sierra Doss. To watch and listen to full episodes of the show and follow us on social media, visit grandpaandchill.com. That's grandpaandchill.com.